nice. I'm really happy with the progress. Everything's going to plan, and it's all looking clean, and you know, no corners cut really. Done a really thorough job on that block. I do need to order an oil pump from Ross Sport before I can put the sump on and officially call the short block done, but there's always something to get on with in the meantime. Now, I'll give you a quick recap on the cylinder head. 52,000 miles. It had dual valve springs from Supertech and titanium retainers. I then fit Jun 272 inlet and exhaust camshafts. When the car blew up, it was sat here like this with parts everywhere for a good 7 months, and that has really taken its toll on the appearance and the cleanliness of these engine components in front of us. Now, I've got a really solid base here, but in its current condition I cannot just put it back together and chuck it on the block. It really does need a full going over. I'll tell you why. Look at this cylinder head. There's bits of pollen, bits of dust, bits of dirt, which are pretty much just general build-up from it being on the side in the garage. So I feel like the best way to get all the carbon off this cylinder head here without actually damaging the valve seats is to clean them while they're still in the head, because the valves are going to protect the seat. So what I'm going to do, just very lightly, I've applied WD-40, which I've always found to break down carbon quite well, and I'm going to use a Dremel with a little stainless brush on it. Because we're using WD-40 and the brush is on such a low speed, it doesn't mar the metal, let alone damage anything. So it's just a case of really agitating all this off and just taking our time. So I'm quite happy with how these pockets have cleaned up here. As you can see, all of the dirt is off. Now it's time to remove the valves. We've got to record where they've come from. So I'll be marking down exhaust 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then intake, and then I'll have to mark down what side of the engine they were on. What I did last time, because I found it quite difficult to get the thing to compress, I used to compress it and then I would wind it up then with the little thread. So the tabs have popped out. Now I can take the retainer, and then you've got both springs then. So unlike a normal Evo 10, this is what is called a dual valve spring setup. So there's an upgraded spring, and then inside that there's a second spring then, so it gives that valve more fighting force, because the bigger the cam, the further the valve will poke out, and I've got quite aggressive ramp angles on these cams, so the valve hasn't got a long time to get back into that, to get back, so you need a lot of spring force to pull it back fast enough. So now there's no valve spring or retainer there, we can just see the top of the valve. So if I push that with my finger, it should pretty much just pop out the other side. So there we are, out comes the valve. Technically I could have put the cylinder head on the block, there was nothing wrong with it, and we could have just sent it and had some fun. But I didn't want to leave any stone unturned on the rebuild, and I'm glad. Already I'm finding things which have made me happy that this head is getting an overhaul. I don't know if it's condensation that has caused this in the garage. I don't know if it's mold, is it oxidization? I haven't got a clue what it is, but there's something in the intake valves. It's not in all of them. It looks like mold, to be honest. Is it oxidization? I don't know. It's not in all of them, it's only in about 3 of them, but it's really soft. Yeah, it looks like oxidation, to be honest, but that would have gone sucked straight into my freshly built bottom end if I hadn't have gone over this head. The second we started the engine up, it would have gone bang, right in, all over them fresh rings and bores, and we'd already be starting, you know, from a bad start. But yeah, we've caught it. It's going to get cleaned out, and just shows really why it's good when you're doing a rebuild not to cut corners, to just go over everything. So finally I've got all the valves out. The exhaust ones, although they're identical, so there shouldn't be a real reason, every single exhaust valve, the retainers were stuck. Absolute nightmare. So this is my valve spring compressor tool. These are the mods I've had to do. It kept popping open, so I put a hose clamp on it and then I wrapped it around there. So under the strain, it's actually started to bend, but that wasn't enough to get it to open the valves. I had to do it as tight as it would go before it would start to bend, and then I had to whack it then with a rubber mallet. And I've managed to get the last ones out, but quite a challenge that was. But they're all out now, so I've just got to take up this last valve here. So this little ring here, it's like a collar or a spring seat that I've added on previously. That's for the inside spring of the dual valve kit. So I have to remove that without damaging it. This inside piece is just the valve stem seal, which is being replaced and upgraded. And then if you look over now at the cylinder head, you can see that's just pretty much what it looks like without the valve stem seal in there. So most of these are actually stuck, but I need to reuse them. They're easy to get off. Just got to put a rag around it in a vise and then just tap the seal off the little spring seat. So when it's in the cylinder head, as you can see, we've got the dual springs here, and it would sort of sit like that. So the cylinder head's now completely disassembled. We've got all the valves here. We've got the cylinder head. All of the springs have been removed, all of the valve stem seals, and then I managed to get all of the inside spring perch off all of the old seals without breaking them. So some of them were a little bit stuck, but managed to get them all off. And then we've also got all the retainers in our little pot there. The cylinder head is now clean, along with all of the valves. It's no exaggeration, it's literally, I've got 12 hours of cleaning just in those valves and this cylinder head. 2 days it took, but it's cleaned up really nice, as you can see. Cleaned all of the cylinder head, and we'll go back around the other side. This will not come off no matter what, but it's not necessary that it does come off. So all cleaned there. Look inside here, nice and clean. I've got all the valve stem seals out, managed to not just get them out, but I managed to salvage all of the spring seats too. So we've got spring seats, big spring, small spring, retainers. So they're clean, but obviously they'll get another clean when they're being installed. Here are the valves. Now all that's left is to reinstall these into the cylinder head with some fresh GSC valve stem seals. But before I go ahead and do that, it's wise now to lap the valves. So I'll explain how we do that and why we do that, but we don't technically have to lap the valves right now, but we didn't technically have to tear down the cylinder head, and we have, and I found all of that corrosion in the ports. So it's good that we're doing it. It's good to lap the valves. For all I know, they weren't sealing as good as they could be, so we're leaving nothing to chance on this build. We're just going through it all. So we'll turn the head over now and I'll explain why we lap the valves. So as you saw when we tore it down, there's a little bit of rust mark here and here, and it's a bit dull. Now this is where the lapping process comes in, because where I just put the valve in there, that seals against this surface. The only way to really get a really good seal is to lap the valves. So that's what we're going to try and do now. So it's quite a simple process. we have this here, which is like a suction thing. We put it on the valve, like so. It's not central, but it's just to show you what we're going to be doing. And then if we turn it like that, with some proper valve lapping paste, we put it on the surface there. We spin this, and then when the surface is nice and shiny, we know that we've got a good seal there. So that's the process. Let's get on with it. So a bit of extra oil on the valve stem seal there, and some cut and paste then on the valve seat. So it's just a case now of grinding it. So I knew he would change pitch, but I wasn't expecting it that quick. I'm sure you heard the same thing I did then. So you can see the valve here, and can you see that shiny line? So on the cylinder head it's the same story. So as you can see, compared to the one on the right, it's much shinier now, but there's that little black line which remains. So I think that I need to get that out, the very thin black line, and I think when that's out, or mostly out, then the valve is technically lapped. Okay, so here's the valve seal. So you can see it's got a really clean line there. I've just reapplied grease, but I looked underneath and it's really clean. But the valve that I'm using, you can see, although there is shiny spots, there's still bits of black, which means that that part of the valve isn't actually contacting the seat. So I'm going to have to keep going, I think, until all of these black marks have been ground out. So quite a bit more work yet, but we'll get there. Okay, so just an update on the way the valve job is going. Here, all of the intake valves, they have quite a peculiar finish to them. Now, I didn't really think much of it until a friend spotted it. Basically, there's quite a lot of pitting, as you can see. So I've spent a couple of minutes lapping that valve, and I can see the pittings deep enough that it's not going to come out. So what I've done is I've taken the opportunity on the intake valves to upgrade now to GSC power division intake valves. Apparently they offer some sort of flow improvement because they are a bit more efficient in the way they're designed on the back of the valve. But I just thought I'd play it safe, and I would just get, you know, some new intake valves. But the exhaust valves are not too bad. Now, a bit of further research on the exhaust valves. These factory valves are sodium filled, so I don't fully understand what that means, but they are the best valves money can buy, basically, for this Evo 10. So either I was going to replace them with factory, or I was going to try and salvage these valves. And as you can see, this is one that's been lapped. It's pretty good. Now I found on some of the valves they are slightly ovaled, but it's coming out with some light lapping. So here's one in progress. So on the left, this one has not been touched at all. That's just as it came out. And look at the condition of the valve there, the valve seat. Not really very good, is it? But here, this is one that's in progress. You can see how clean that sealing surface is. And if we look at the valve, that lovely dull grey pattern all around the valve. And this is in progress. As you can see, it's still sealing here. But that's like with it slightly ovaled, which is normal. They do oval over time, but yeah, it's coming out. I'll give it a couple more minutes and I reckon that'll be out perfect then. Should be done on this valve. If you've got a really bad one, I've put a screw in the end of this, so I can just do this.
but it's not necessary in this case. So I'm just putting this cloth through. It's a bit too big for the port, but get some long nose pliers and just ram it through. And then then it's caught any debris that could be possibly in there. Okay, so I've gone over the whole cylinder head again, just giving it a really thorough clean. You've got to be super careful when building an engine. Just looked in one of the intake ports, there was 2 little tiny wire bristles off a Dremel wire brush attachment. So that's exactly why we've got to clean everything and clean and clean and clean. Okay, so now the time has come to open the packet of GSC Power Division valve stem seals. Now originally this whole head rebuild started off from me just wanting to just put some new seals in since I was here. I didn't the last time I removed the head, and I thought, well, I might as well change them out since they're only about 70 odd quid. But aren't I glad now that I started to work on the head, because as we saw from the valves, there's a fair bit of funny business going on, wasn't there, in the head. So 17mm socket in my case, they fit right over. And I just sort of keep it square. No major whacking, just as I said, you want it roughly where it's got to be. And then on to the next one. All the valve stem seals are now in. So we're going to be fitting the springs, retainers and the valves next. I don't really need to put oil on the springs. They'll sort of get oil as soon as the engine cranks over. They're not really a friction surface on the springs, but I am going to put a bit of oil on the valve stems. Probably I'll just dip them in oil when I insert them into the cylinder head. Probably not necessary, but I'd rather play it safe. Just for the first start, I don't want it running dry and damaging those Vitron seals on the valve stem seal. So the spring seats are now in. Some of them needed a little bit of persuading to go in, just sit snug on that valve stem seal. So all I did was the same thing as I did with the valve stem seals. 17mm socket and an extension, just tapped the spring seat and they sit then onto the valve stem seal. So now it's time to start putting the valves in. Okay, so making good progress now, just 5 left. What I'm basically doing, I'm using this valve compressor tool to compress these springs here. Once the valve spring retainer is on, and once it's compressed like that, there's a little groove at the top of the valve. You probably see it better on that one there. So that groove there, I'm trying to get these little lock-in pins, 2 of them in each. They basically hold the spring, valve, retainer, everything is all held in place then. So it's quite a slow process. You've got to take your time, otherwise you might damage something. And they're very fiddly, so it's just trying to wiggle them in with a magnetic screwdriver. Okay, so here is the finished cylinder head, ready to go onto the engine block. I'm sure you'll agree, it's looking pretty good. Especially for a DIY job, and especially considering I reused those exhaust valves. I think that's a really good effort. Cannot wait now to get it onto the engine, onto the block, but that is going to be in another video. At least for now though, I can rest easy knowing the cylinder head's done. That's the hard bit. The block's done, which is under this blanket. And then basically it's just now head studs, head gasket, timing chain in the car. So much easier. So I do hope you're enjoying the content on the Evo. I put a poll up recently asking if you want to see my new van or you want to see an Evo video. And you said an Evo video, and I do listen. So I've been working on this head all day because a video is technically due out this evening. So yeah, thanks for everyone that gets involved in the channel. Thanks for everyone that comments, likes the videos, and even just clicks on them. So thanks for that, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.